There, Doug Wingate back again, here to talk about the eight circuit model of consciousness and Chinese medicine, how it can be integrated into Chinese medicine, and how it can inform the practice of a Chinese medicine practitioner. So, last video I went through a brief breakdown of what the eight circuit model of consciousness is and really briefly went over each of the stages. Today we're going to go a little bit more in depth about the first level, which is the biosurvival circuit of consciousness. And as it's named, this circuit has a lot to do with one's means of survival and ensuring that the survival needs are met. And so this is a circuit that's the first to be imprinted. It's imprinted very early in life, and because of that, it can sit really deeply within somebody's psyche and play out through the rest of one's life. So, given that this is primarily around survival needs, it's imprinted based on the early connections and interactions with the environment. And so, if a young child, baby has, it's imprinted between the ages of about newborn to 3 months, and so very, very early before the psyche or the ego even has a chance to really develop. And so, with that, they don't consciously recognize themselves as separate from the environment or separate from their parental figure, their nurturing figure, who plays a key aspect in the imprinting process of this. And so, if during that stage, the environments or the adults around them does not provide a nourishing environment, and so if their needs are not fully met, then the individual can take an imprint that it's the external world is kind of a hostile environment. They have to work to thrive and survive and exist, and because of that, it can create a deep-seated fear of the external and interactions, and that can play out into adult life as a underlying anxiety or fear, as well as just not feeling fulfilled in one's life, and that's due to not feeling fulfilled early on in life. And of course, if those needs are met appropriately and sufficiently, then the individual will take a positive imprint and tend to view the external world as a safe place where they can go out and explore and figure things out for themselves. A lot of the basis of the circuit is based on the somatic bodily experience, sensory experience, and because of that not recognition or that lack of forming of an ego yet, their experience of the external world is very sensory based, and so this is, correlates to Freud's oral stage, and this is of course when babies are touching everything and putting everything in their mouth to experience it and taste it and see what it feels like and textures and shapes and things like that. And so this is also very much why kids tend to embody either the imprinting or emotional things, experiences, traumas that happen during this stage. It tends to be very locked into the body and can cause a lot of physiological symptoms and a lot of symptoms of kind of sympathetic nervous system overload in a sense. And the primary directive or drive in this imprint, or in this circuit rather, as well as that fear response and whether or not they see the external environment essentially as safe or something to be avoided or leery of. And so with that, the mothering figure who, without the ego, is not necessarily perceived as something separate from the self, from the child, that is an extension of themselves, and so if that is not nourishing, then it has a strong impact on the psyche long into adult life, if not their whole life. So Within Chinese medicine, this roughly correlates to working with the kidney yin, the kidney qi, so the kidney organ system, and then the earth element, elements of stomach and spleen organ pathologies. And so, of course, treatment methods, there are specific points to help nourish kidney yin or kidney qi, move the kidney qi if necessary, tonify the earth. I apologize about that. I had to pause there for a second. So we were talking about the earth element, working with the spleen and the stomach to help tonify those or move things as necessary to resolve some of the issues that come up here. Within the chakra model, and I do integrate the chakra model, but my main concern with that, those elements, is the connective tissue compartment, which is described as the region where the chakra is located, as well as a lot of the endocrinology associated with the chakra system. And so with this, the compartment, the fascial compartment, is the lower pelvic region, and the endocrine organ that's associated with this is the adrenal glands. And so those two don't necessarily correlate. The bottom of the pelvis, the floor of the pelvis, and the adrenal glands, there's a fair amount of space in between those. And rectify that is, if you look in Deadman's book on the meridians and his points book, the governing vessel and the conception vessel are described as beginning around Mingmen GV4 and around the area of the adrenal glands. And it's an internal channel that then descends and becomes an external channel at the entry points, the GV1 and CV1 and GV1, excuse me. And so there's a direct connection there between the adrenals and then the pelvic floor. And so a lot of the work that's done here involves moving that connective tissue of the pelvic floor down below that, so down into the legs and the feet. It's a lot of the bioenergetic work, or the release of muscle tension that's related with the psychological components of this circuit, are down in the feet and the legs, and then I guess at the bottom of the pelvis there. So that includes external exercises that people can do with their feet, literally just getting out and walking around, especially barefoot on the ground. Any exercises that tend to be really grounding for a person. So gardening is a big one for a lot of people. You get out there and work in the dirt, and it can be very grounding. Literally just jumping up and down, or exercises that help you feel more stable on your feet can help regulate the connective tissue through the legs and in that pelvic bowl to get things a little bit more balanced. That correlation with the adrenal glands, of course, the fear component is listed as a psycho-emotional component of the root chakra, that first chakra, as well as it's a key component of the first circuit as well. If you imprint the entire world as a dangerous place that's not nourishing for you, then it elicits fear of that which is not you, that which is outside of you, and so that fear component plays into all of it. So there you go. Jenny Wade's holonomic model of consciousness, excuse me. She has two stages that roughly correlate with this. The first is the reactive, which is right at the newborn stage, and the second is the naive consciousness, which is a little bit more closely correlated to what's described in the biosurvival circuit. And the two are run pretty closely, a lot of the same descriptions. So if that's something you want to look into, it complements the material really nicely. And like I said, once the individual has taken that imprint, and if they see the external environment as something unsafe and to be avoided, then they really move inward and don't really take upon themselves further exploration, and it can be very anxiety inducing. And those who take the positive imprint move outward more freely into the world to interact with others, and develop themselves to onto the next stage, although move onto the next stage regardless, and that will be the emotional territorial circuit that develops around the age of 2, and we will discuss in the next video.